Für die Fraktionslosen.
For the non-attached, Bruno Gollnisch has 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Monsieur le Président,
President, the current crisis is a crisis of the euro globalising system. It's been the occasion of many efforts on your part, but the framework for those efforts, I think, tells us that the Union is not up to it. It's not fit for purpose. Yes, measures have been taken, but things could have been done perfectly well in a national context or using traditional multilateral diplomacy. The national framework, for example, the relaunching the economy, is different depending on the country, and that's not a scandal or outrageous to accept that. We know that different countries, different strokes for different countries. In European policy terms, it's necessary. I think we have looked at the Merkel policy, the Brown policy, but we have to remember that the national framework is where these things belong. The frontiers are there to protect nations, and sovereignty means that you can act promptly and effectively. The traditional diplomatic world, bilateral, multilateral, that was necessary to solve the Georgian crisis or the economic crisis with the meeting of the G20 in Washington, where only a small number of European countries, with China, the US, Japan, Canada, Saudi Arabia and others, that's the way. That shows you that the Union is too confined, too small, to resolve the big problems which we now have to address. Many changes have been made at a time of artificial euphoria. The energy climate package, for example, has been surrounded by so many opt-outs and derogations that it's been emasculated and emptied of its substance. Because of the crisis, constraints, industry would see its bills go up by 30%, and that they don't want to go down that path. 75% of them. The economic recovery, 1.5% of GDP compared to 4% in the US and 10% in China. And no sooner was the ink dry on the immigration pact, but it's been contravened by Italy, with 165,000 illegal immigrants being regularised. Where are they going to go? It's clear that this chosen immigration and the blue card, so-called, will only mean that the third world is deprived of its best brains, its brightest and best people they need for their development. These measures cannot substitute for the kind of immigration we are seeing. It's going to simply pile on the agony and make matters worse. Internationally, we condemn the terrible practice whereby if a country refuses the revolution, they refuse servitude and refuse to bow the knee, and the question is simply put to them again, time and again, without accepting the fact that perhaps the Union got it wrong. The Lisbon Treaty has not been simplified. It's basically the Constitution dusted down after its rejection by the Dutch and the French. I think we're going in a totalitarian, authoritarian approach, listening to Mr. Cohn-Bendit talking about your successor, or the liberticide, which is what Mr. Barroso sounds like he's saying. Mr. Toubon called this Stalinian when this was being adopted. It seems to me that union, whatever you have said, is the enemy of the nations, and what it brings is it pays service to globalisation and undermines us economically, socially, morally. It's not an area where freedom is protected, and yet that's what our nations want and what we want for them. Thank you.
Just for a brief personal explanation, Mr. Schulz. Well, I apologise if I crave some time to speak here. It was for a personal attack from Mr. Farage. He's still here, which is good, because normally after